its photographer and its owner. Glosser Images closed without notice last fall. That prompted a consumer fraud investigation. Wrigley says the investigation found 539 complaints totaling nearly $1.5 million. The shutdown left wedding couples without their pictures. The complaint says Glosser had been having financial issues for years, but falsely blamed the closing on the pandemic. Wrigley is asking for restitution for customers and subcontractors. Senator Amy Klobuchar is warning of repercussions like never before if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. Politico released an initial draft majority opinion by Justice Samuel Alito that says authority to regulate abortions must be returned to the states. Klobuchar says it would mean the return of back-alley abortions and people having to take buses to other states. KFGO Weather Center forecast about 57 the high, mostly sunny this afternoon. 39 overnight, partly cloudy. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy and 59. 48, Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
KFGO time is 2:10. Thanks for keeping it locked in to 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM KFGO. I'm Tyler Axis, your host. Eric Johnson, well, he's our producer. I'm going to be with you until 5 o'clock here on Afternoons Live. Same situation as yesterday. We got a truncated drive because Twins, well, they're at Baltimore again. They did win last night 2-1. Cannot say the same for the Minnesota Wild, unfortunately, and that's unfortunate, I think, is the easiest way. It's got that feel to it. I know we had that lump in our throats when we knew it was going to be the Blues, knowing the track record. Well, it seemed as though just an error after error. Everything that could have gone wrong for the Wild seems to have taken place last night at the XL. So, unfortunate news there. Is it almost come to be expected when it's playoff time for Minnesota sports? At least we got the glimmer of hope so far early on in the season when it comes to your Twins, the Red Hot Twins. What have they got? 10 out of the last 11, I think, that they've now won, and now they got Baltimore again tonight. Is it a 3 or 4 game series? I'm asking my producer. His name is Eric Johnson. 6?
It's a 7-game series.
No, that was 7. I can't count that quick when you do that, clearly.
7
Every time you've used your digits, meaning your fingers, on this live show, I can never get right what you have just presented to me. That might speak more volume to me and my quick processing or lack thereof than anything. 7 game series. Okay, I had no idea. Well, we'll talk with Chris Atterbury tomorrow about all that. So much more.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were talking hockey.
Yeah, no, it's Twins. It's like a 4.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Baltimore's a 4-game series. I thought you were
Good.
still talking the
This is a great
Wilds,
way to start
Yep.
a Tuesday. A sunny Tuesday is for both of us to have a comedy of errors here. So
Baltimore's a 4-game series. They get done Thursday, then they play, I forget who next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're 0 for
Monday,
2.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. All 6 o'clock first pitch because the truncated drive time news is 5 to 5:30.
Yeah, and
Monday
you are
Thursday.
a producer of that show as well. So I like that time for a start of baseball. Get it in about 6 o'clock. I'm fine with that. They can do that all season long. 237-5948 is the Laney studio line. Your conversation welcome all day today, whether that's that or as many of you choose to do. The Eye Consultants of North Dakota Text Club is available at 35270. We're going to pick up a little bit from last night on a couple of fronts. Well, 3 fronts, really. We will get into the Supreme Court a little bit later on. When it comes to just the landscape of everything, as to what the implications, the way I have this and the way I view that is there's really 3 lanes to be talking about in what was leaked last night into Politico from the Supreme Court. A first draft from Justice Sam Alito that looks to Well, it's now been confirmed that is, in fact, a legitimate draft from Alito. I think Roberts came out today and said, yep, it's real. And they're upset about the leak, which is one of those angles that we're going to have to get into of the impact of leaking some of these things, that longstanding tradition from the Supreme Court. And what that does for the credibility, what that does for the work environment within the court. We're going to have that conversation, but also, I mean, it's obvious that there are other implications here. You got what that means for the court, what this means for the midterm election, especially if, in fact, that draft is upheld and that becomes the final decision without very big edits to it. The political implications here of this midterm, I think, just got thrown in. All the things that were in our minds and in your minds as to what one of the top issues for the midterms are going to be, this really throws a wrench into that. So anyone claiming to know exactly how this is going to impact or what this does, it's all changed overnight. And the changes aren't just on the federal level. If, in fact, what is going to be the decision, if it's the way it is, as was reported last night in Politico and confirmed today, is going to have implications all the way down to your legislature, those legislative races. And if I'm a governor, say in Minnesota, or a candidate for governor, this has now become one of the forefront issues as well, because it's going to be down to those states. Now, some of them have the trigger laws that have already been passed over the last decade. Now, what's that? If you haven't been paying attention, which I don't fault you for, you have states that have passed their laws saying, if in fact that gets overturned at the Supreme Court level, here's what state law then becomes. North Dakota is one of those. South Dakota is one of those. Minnesota, Montana, they're not, as best as I can tell. But I think right now the breakdown is about 23 states in which changes will be coming when it comes to the reproductive abortion, whatever you want to describe it as. We all know the topic here. So you got the political impact, but also I think the top one is the decision on, women's rights. So there's 3 tracks that we got to go down, and we will a little bit later on. Jason Matthews, he is a political science instructor at Bismarck State College, also the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. He's taught a couple of courses on politics and the Supreme Court, and I think it's tough to say that politics hasn't been injected in the Supreme Court over the last couple of decades. This, I think, just being the latest. Does it completely damage the court overall because of a leak? Well, we'll get his take on that because he's talked about that in his courses. My question, when it has all these finger pointing from people in Washington, is, well, it had to have been somebody from that law clerk, right? It had to be from that side. I think you got to ask yourself, who benefits the most from this leak? Not just for this individual, but when it comes to the court itself. So we'll have that conversation. But I do want to start some local here, because there's a couple of items. One we're going to dive into when it comes to the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association, because that has been thrown around pretty loosely here over the last 12 hours, 24 hours, when it comes to development, when it comes to rowers construction, and what was promised, what has been completed, what is now being asked of that project going forward. And one thing that has been thrown around is this association, because if you recall, early in this process, they were, the way I would observe it, they were the top negotiating force with rowers. I mean, the city seems to have just said, here, this is going to be your neighborhood. You do the negotiation. Well, now here we are, all these months and years later, and there are tensions. And if you have not heard throughout the day of, Fargo City Commissioner Dave Pepcorn really grilling Jim Roars, who I know that Senator Jim Roars was in the studio, News and Views, giving his side of it. You can tell that there's not a lot of love in the room. Now, there's a couple of lanes that we got to go down there as well. One, promises made, were they kept? Contract work, how do you negotiate this going forward? The association probably doesn't want to be back involved in renegotiating something that they thought was agreed upon earlier on. We're going to find out from them in just a little bit with Kenan Oxen. He's going to be joining us with that association, sharing his side and their side of where they view where things are. You have that. These two things can coincide because they're both at play here. That's one. And the other is the politics of all this. I mean, it's undenying the fact that you have got people that want to be mayor, people that want to be on the city commission, and there's a lot of involvement all around on this particular project. The Roar's name in of itself, and what you got a state senator whose daughter is also a state representative wanting to be mayor who works for that construction job or that construction company. So that being a part of this conversation and the way of which it's not tough to figure out who's, involved in city politics and who wants who as mayor or who wants who to be sitting next to them on a city commission. I think if there was any shade over your eyes, that was pulled back last night in the way of which Dave Pepcorn was really grilling and using this opportunity, I think, to inject this conversation onto the candidates for mayor. And whether or not it sticks, in particular for Shannon Roars-Jones, who, quite frankly, who was brought up from Dave Pepcorn in this. And with that audio saying, well, his daughter wants to be mayor here. Her fingerprints are all over this, is how you can read into that. The lines are being drawn here. And it'll be interesting to see how that develops going forward, because if you're looking at the calendar right now, May 3rd, we've got a very short window between now and when that June election's coming up. And with this getting completely blasted over and over in the news, it's going to be top of mind for a number of these voting individuals in the city of Fargo. So, orchestrated or not, it's a part of the conversation now and something we're going to have in just a little bit. In fact, I've got 35270. Text club's blowing up. Tell you what, I'm a little bit behind my time. I'm going to take a quick pause here. I'll come back. This whole first hour, we can just really dive in. Do you side with the city? Do you side with Roar's Construction? Because right now they're at odds with each other, and there's politics all abundant on it. We'll talk about that when we come back here. I'm Tyler Axis. We're just getting started here on Afternoons Live. Don't go anywhere. That are coming in about the Roe v. Wade topic. I'm going to save those because in just a little bit we're going to be talking with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. But we will get to those, and if you sent them in, I'm not ignoring them. I will get to those when we dive in to that at the top of the hour here. But after the KFJ News, Ken and Oxen, he's with that association up in North Fargo, going to be joining us. In the meantime, a lot of messages coming in, and I'm not surprised, and I'm sure that those that are involved in the Roars Jones campaign for mayor are probably pulling their hair out the way of which this has really wrapped that campaign up into this. But that's what happens when you've got the construction company that's got a lot of fingerprints when it comes to projects that involve the city, the state, all that. That I'm sure was expected. The spectacle that happened last night probably caught people off guard, but that's what we're getting in right now. So I'm going to get to the text club here. Tyler, as I mentioned before, I will be campaigning against Shannon Roars Jones. It is a conflict of interest that she either need to give up any of their bidding with the city, or she needs to not be running for mayor. It's already been a conflict of interest with the positions that she's already held. I'm not sure about the other conflicts, but that is one that comes in. Another one, I rarely, if ever, agree with Dave Pepcorn, but this time he's got it right. Another one, Tyler, remind people that Ms. Roars is trying to buy job of mayor. We aren't dumb. Burgum has money behind her over the top campaign. Fargo TV ads really coming in, and there's more of some of that. Tyler, it's interesting that Roars' timing coincides with his daughter's campaign. He knows how to manipulate the game by accusing the commission of playing politics. Well, in that accusation, I don't think we can just ignore that as being a factor in some of this. As I was saying, it is both. It can be both. That you've got what was agreed upon, there was ink to paper on this, and you've got the city, you've got the company, and you've got the association. We're going to get the association side on this in about 10 minutes time here because they were loosely brought up left and right here. No pun intended on the politics of this. There is expectation that was agreed upon. That is one of the angles here. And I think that is certainly something that needs to be addressed when it comes to bidding, when it comes to tax dollars being used, when it comes to extensions, requests. But you can't turn the blind eye also. I mean, you can't just ignore. As somebody said, we're not dumb. I mean, there's politics at play here as well when it comes to the fact that you've got a candidate that's involved with a company that is a part of this, that is dealing with the city. And I do think if people have been asking, because I don't have a dog in the fight, ladies and gentlemen, I am not a Fargo resident anymore. I don't get a vote on this. I would just share you my opinion. When you have individuals in prominent positions like this, whether it's lawmakers or in a company, that conflict of interest question I think is fair to ask. And whether or not if there's the need for any recusal, if in fact, say, for example, and we're going to have Shannon Roars Jones on. I've had her on as a guest a number of times. I think we've been very cordial with each other. And, it's if in fact there is something before the city and you are mayor, you win the job that you're running for right now, do you recuse yourself? Because I can tell you right now, if you're listening or if people in the campaign are, that's the expectations coming in and the questions at 35270. I mean, they're a little bit more direct than that, but I think that's going to be a fair question that needs to be directly answered from that campaign now following what was brought forward last night. Tyler, I love Pepcorn. I just wish he was running for mayor, but I will admit he could tone down the language just a bit. That's one. If we're going to talk about Dave Pepcorn and his approach, because there's people agreeing with him, the bombast approach, the way of which he just delivers this, overshadows some of the facts that he brings forward, or some of the line of questioning he brings forward. Dave, tone it down just a little bit, because the line of what your thought was is on a lot of people's minds, but they're really distracted by the way of which you present it. We'll come back. We'll have the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association right after this.
49. I'm Paul Jurgens. Governor Tim Walz is reacting to a draft opinion indicating that the U.S. Supreme Court may overturn Roe v. Wade. The Democrat is making it clear that Minnesota would make its own decision on abortion.
We're at a dangerous time. We're at a dangerous time that we know what happened before Roe, and we know that now the states are going to be responsible for this. The Minnesota Constitution is stronger. Whoever sits in this office, and I have the privilege to right now, will make that decision.
The anti-abortion group Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life also acknowledges that most states would have to act before abortions would be banned. However, in North Dakota and South Dakota, abortions could be banned 30 days after a Supreme Court ruling. Attorney General Drew Wrigley has sued a Bismarck-based photographer and its owner. Glosser Images closed without notice last fall. That prompted a consumer fraud investigation. Wrigley says the investigation found 539 complaints totaling nearly $1.5 million. The shutdown left wedding couples without their pictures. The complaint says Glosser had been having financial issues for years, but falsely blamed the closing on the pandemic. Wrigley is asking for restitution for customers and subcontractors. 49. This is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. Bismarck police have identified the man who exchanged gunfire with police officers and died yesterday. The body of 31-year-old Eric Hermanson was found in a shed by West Dakota SWAT. Police were investigating a stolen car report in a trailer park when Hermanson fled out the back door of a mobile home. Officers gave pursuit on foot and returned fire after they say Hermanson shot at them during the chase. It's believed that he barricaded himself in the shed, but it's still unclear if the shot was self-inflicted or happened in the exchange of gunfire. The head of the Minnesota Nurses Association is pleased that Governor Walz and the legislature have finally given approval to COVID bonus checks of $750 to over 600,000 frontline workers in Minnesota. Mary Turner says she sees it as a thank you to those who helped the state deal with the pandemic.
I was there when we didn't know what this entailed, when our nurses would make sure that they changed their clothes and showered before they went home because they didn't want to bring the COVID back to their families.
The checks are set to go out in the coming weeks. Minnesota's Court of Appeals has sided with a Wright County man who was fined for flying a huge Donald Trump flag on the top of a crane. The court found the Buffalo City Council denied Jay Johnson's free speech rights when it decided the 30 by 50-foot flag violated the local sign ordinance because of its size and a lack of a permit. The flag is attached to the top of a crane at Johnson's construction business in Buffalo. The city initially fined Johnson $600 for the Trump flag, which read, Trump 2020, Keep America Great. KFGO weather from meteorologist Tom Shemansky. We should see a high of about 57 this afternoon, mostly sunny, 39. Some clouds overnight. Will be mostly cloudy tomorrow, 59. Thursday, partly to mostly cloudy, the high temp near 64, and then near 69 Friday, partly sunny. 49, Paul Jurgens News Radio KFGO.
Rusty Alverson in the KFGO studio.
Good afternoon, Ty.
Pal, good afternoon to you. Sunshine, and you
sunny
can just
outside.
feel it.
Yeah.
You can. People are smiling. There's a bit of a hop in the step.
Yep.
We'll see if we can maintain that throughout the show here, because we got some heavy stuff we're going to get into.
Yeah.
A lot of people's minds, though, if they're in agriculture, when the heck are we going to get out there and get this planted in?
Yeah. According to Too Tall Tom, looks like the forecast is reloading for more rain this weekend. That's not exactly what we need for planting progress.
I would agree.
Yeah.
There's with this last bout that we had, there's fields north of Fargo that the wind was blowing. It kind of looked like a lake out there.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but some of them. So there's water, and it just keeps coming.
Yeah. In fact, spring wheat, sugar beet, corn growers facing another week of very slow planting progress, not just in the northern plains, but in many places around the nation. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey.
Minimal acreage has been planted in the Red River Valley the Minnesota-North Dakota border and surrounding areas. It is flooding in the Red River Valley of the north, and that is putting a damper on any field work. We have seen 1% of the sugar beet intended acreage planted in Minnesota, 5-year average 38%. No planting yet in North Dakota, 5-year average is 30%.
Yeah, when it comes to corn, Tyler, Minnesota, North Dakota, no planting. Last year, we were just over half done in Minnesota. Of course, it was so doggone dry last year.
It was, but hearing those numbers pretty eye popping.
Yeah.
It has 0% compared to 30% as the 5-year average. Eesh.
Yeah. Yep.
There's only so many times you can clean the equipment and get that shop nice and tidy before you'd start going cropper.
I'm sure there's more than one guy out there listening right now who's sick of pushing a broom.
Probably. My thoughts are with you, Mopper. Rusty, appreciate it. Come back next hour. I'll talk about E15.
Yeah, let's talk about gas prices.
Yeah, people cruising around perhaps today with that window down. We'll play some of those songs. As long as you don't speed, that's all we care about. If you can't wait till next hour, KFGO.com. You can just click on that agriculture tab. Him and Sarah Heinrich, best in the business. They prove it every day on that. Tell you what, CBS National News on the way when we come back. Kenan Oxen, he is with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. There's been their association has been thrown all over this conversation. We'll get it straight from him right after this.
Gonna break my rusty cage and run.
Tonight, during the commission meeting and then earlier today here on KFGO, you've had the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association getting thrown back into the conversation about what's going on up in North Fargo when it comes to a development from Rohr's Construction, what was agreed upon when it comes to townhomes as part of a compromise. And I wanted to give those involved with the association a chance to share their piece here on KFGO. And here to do that is Ken E. Nixon. You're going to be joining us giving the peace of mind from the Roosevelt Association. Ken, I appreciate your time today. How are you? It helps if I click the on-air button, Ken. I apologize. It's like I'm new to this and I don't know what I'm doing, but I appreciate you taking time knowing how busy you are today. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
Good. Well, here we are again, I think is what some of us have been kind of reminiscing, I guess, throughout the next or this last morning, because last night there was a lot of emotion, a lot of tension that was on display from city commissioners in regards to this development of what your association has been involved with. And then earlier today, State Senator Jim Rohrs was on KFGO, and I'm looking at my producer to get this audio so you can take a listen. Then we'll just discuss what he had to say about this. Take a listen to this, Ken.
I talked to the people from the Roosevelt community. They said until last Thursday, they never knew there was an issue. They never knew there was an issue.
So this is in regards to where we are in this development, Ken. I'm just curious your response to watching this unfold over the last couple of years, and if you didn't know there was an issue, I guess is where we'll start here.
Well, I guess the first thing is I'm not sure who Jim Rohrs was speaking with. The fact that we don't have paid staff to keep us reminded about deadlines coming our way, when he doesn't mean that we don't care about the issue. This was a critical negotiation that was made when essentially the city forced us to step into negotiations with Rohrs directly to work out some kind of compromise. And the compromise that was given to us was that so that we wouldn't have to see this monstrosity from the rest of the neighborhood to the east, that we would have these townhomes to act as a buffer. And so it was the one thing that we felt like we walked away with that was basically a win for us. And the fact that maybe we weren't on top of the deadlines, I mean, it's like, again, we're not the ones with paid staff. We just are private citizens trying to live our lives and move on with things the way they are. And then to have, Jim suggests that he's talked. I don't know who he talked to. He certainly didn't talk to me. He doesn't talk to anybody. Those of us with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association that were involved with this conversation back then, I just don't know. It is a big deal when we found out that he was basically talking about, delaying this. And, it just raises all kinds of questions that we had back then when it was suggested that they would build these. I think there was an element of trust that we were not sure we could believe that they would actually go through with that. It was going to be kind of a phase 2 to their project. And the fact that he's now wanting to back away from it suggests that our concerns about trust were valid. So from our perspective, yeah, it is a big deal. It was a big deal. It is still a big deal.
One of the things that he was saying earlier on KFGO as well, because there's that notion out there that they're not gonna go forward with the townhomes. He's pushing back on that. That is the intent for Rohrs to finish that. But I mean, you mentioned trust? I mean, has that already been broken? Is there anything that can be done to reclaim that as far as what Rohrs Construction can do for the association, that peace of mind, saying, look, we thought we had an agreement here, and the early stages, this was our concern. Now here we are these years later, and it hasn't really been resolved yet. I'm curious, what do you want the next steps to be, Ken?
Well, we'd like to see follow through. I think what we want to see is some very clear view an indication that they are going to follow through with this. We're certainly not interested in trying to get back into negotiations as a neighborhood with roars on a timeline. That really is, I mean, the issue that was at hand last night at the commission meeting was a legal contract issue, and we're not a part of it. I mean, it's between the city and roars, and they need to duke that out and figure out how they're going to proceed. We want to see, ultimately, we want to see those 7 townhomes built up as promised with the green space that they had promised, and, go from there.
Well, and that's what, when you talk about this now being in that legal stage between the city and Roars Construction, as you pointed out earlier in the process, the city seemed to have given you the keys as far as the association. So, well, you guys go find some agreement here. And I know you don't want to get back into this, but since you were part of that negotiation, is there an obligation from anyone in the association to have a seat at that table, do you think?
Well, having a seat at the table and being the ones actually having to make the decision, which is essentially what happened to us last time, are two different things. We don't want this to be somehow resting on our opinion. I mean, our opinion is it needs to go forward. How that happens is really up to the city and Roars. We've definitely got some things we'd like to talk about, but we would want to have it a 3-party conversation with the city and in the room and Roars. And ultimately, we just want to be heard, and we want to feel like they actually take us seriously when we raise these concerns.
In the past conversations, did you feel that way, that you were being heard? I mean, that this was a bit of a compromise, the way I understand it. Now, I've been watching from a distance, so that's why I asked the question. So I'll leave it there. I mean, when this process got to here, did we feel like, okay, it's been resolved, and with that watchful eye, now here we are exactly where we were fearful of in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing came about because we had forced a supermajority vote on the commission. We had gotten enough people in the neighborhood to basically say they were protesting this, and we brought the signatures to the city, and they were obligated to say, okay, so we need a supermajority to move forward on this, and it was clear that they didn't have it. So basically, the city, from that standpoint, said, well, we need to figure out how we can get this through. And so then they came forward with a suggestion that, well, why don't we get Roars and the Roosevelt neighborhood to kind of talk to each other. And Roars came forward with this suggestion of the townhomes, along with dropping the height, which was our main concern of the building. They didn't drop it as far as we would have liked it. And we made that clear to them even during the negotiations that we weren't happy about that. But I think we began to realize that this was as far as it was going to get. And there was a lot of pressure to put on us to basically say, play along so that we can say we have a compromise. Well, it was a one-sided compromise from our standpoint all along. And one of the key pins, the linchpins to this whole thing, were the townhomes. So
there's another character or variable here when it involves the church up there. Have they been also a part of this conversation at all, or is this just kind of they've been, I don't know if I dare say reaping benefits, but when we're hearing that this company went above and beyond to make sure that part was done first, I mean, have they been at this table? Have you been in contact with them as well?
So early on, it was they were definitely part of that conversation, but I mean, our disagreement was never with the Newman Center. Yeah. Basically it was like, that they could do whatever they felt they needed to do to draw students, and we didn't have a concern with that. Our main concern has always been the high density and the height. The project from the Roar standpoint, as far as the apartments, just did not sit well.
Ken, going forward, are we just the association just wants promises that were made to be kept? Is that kind of what I'm gathering here before I let you go?
Yep, that's the main thing. It's like, hey, you made this offer. We agreed to the final kind of cut based on that promise, and we just would like to see it go forward.
Ken, anything else before I let you go? I appreciate your time, as I was saying at the top here, but final word goes to you before I let you go.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out to us. We're happy to work with the parties, but again, this comes back to a dispute between the city and Roars.
Well, we're going to be following along and providing them an opportunity as well. But Ken, I wanted to get your input because I know, like we were saying early on in the process, the association did a lot of heavy lifting to get it to where we thought there was an agreement. So I appreciate your time, as I've been telling you. I'm going to let you go, and we'll chat again soon, all right?
All right, thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Ken Nixon, he's with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. Lots of messages in at the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club, 35270. I'll come back to those right after this KFGO weather update. concert, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Saturday. The crowd got so loud during the performance of Calling Baton Rouge that it actually caused a small earthquake. True story.
I love when crowds can register on seismographs.
Uh-huh. I'm trying to think of what the loudest moment of any show I've been to has been.
Oh, boy.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't come into this conversation with a moment in mind, but could you imagine being in that crowd
awesome.
at Baton Rouge when Calling Baton Rouge comes on?
I mean, you've been at some Bison games that feel like the earth is shaking.
Yeah, I would have to say that Eastern, Georgia Southern game at the Dome, the greatest game to ever be witnessed.
Was it
in the Dome.
a playoff run by Marshawn Lynch in Seattle that registered on some seismographs?
Because he was running all over the New Orleans Saints.
Yes.
I will never forget that run. Your loudest concert moment, 35270. We send those in. All the other comments about the city of Fargo, Roar's construction, and yes, the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court leak. That's coming up. We're going to dive into that with Jason Matthews right after KFGO News.
KFGO News 50. I'm Paul Jergens. North Dakota has been poised for years to outlaw abortions if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns its landmark 1973 ruling legalizing the procedure nationwide. The 2007 state law makes it a felony to perform an abortion unless necessary to prevent a woman's death or in cases of rape or incest. North Dakota is one of about a dozen states, including South Dakota, that have laws that would ban abortion if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, as a draft opinion leaked suggests. North Dakota has just one abortion provider, the Red River Women's Clinic in Fargo. The clinic director says she'll now give serious consideration to relocating to Moorhead, where abortion restrictions would be decided by the state. Anti-abortion groups in Minnesota encourage that the court may strike down the Roe v. Wade decision, but Scott Fishbach with Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life says it would not mean an immediate change in most states.
Even if the United States Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, when it comes back to Minnesota, we still need to overturn the Doe versus Gomez decision.
The National Guard is helping to stabilize a dam in Cavalier County in northeastern North Dakota that is in danger of failing and causing even worse flooding. Governor Burgum, at the request of Pembina County Emergency Management, authorized the Guard to send 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters to place 1-ton sandbags to help stop the Bordanis Dam from failing. Attorney General Drew Wrigley has sued a Bismarck-based photographer and its owner. Glaser Images closed without notice last fall. That prompted a consumer fraud investigation. Wrigley says the investigation found 539 complaints totaling nearly $1.5 million. The shutdown left wedding couples without their pictures. The complaint says Glaser had been having financial issues for years, but falsely blamed the closing on the pandemic. Wrigley is asking for restitution for customers and contractors. Fargo-Moorhead near 57 this afternoon, under a mostly sunny sky. Overnight 39, partly cloudy, and a mostly cloudy tomorrow near 59. Fargo-Moorhead, sunny 50. Paul Jergens, News Radio KFGO.
Well, last night, a lot of things changed based on a political report, a leak from the Supreme Court of the United States. The leak in of itself has now been the conversation, especially from politicians out in Bismarck, but also the court itself. There's politics involved because we're in a midterm election as well. And, of course, there's more to this conversation that you and I will dive into. But on those two particular topics, I reached out to a friend. His name is Jason Matthews. He's the adjunct political science instructor at Bismarck City College, also Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, where he has taught 2 courses on the politics and the Supreme Court. Jason Matthews, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing swell. Sun's shining, 50 degrees. I'm happy. But you know what? This is a heavy topic that we got to dive into here. And over the course of, I don't know, the last few hours since the leak happened, there is certainly people in Washington who want to focus on the leak. So let's start there. Historical nature of this thing. Has this ever happened with the Supreme Court before?
We've always had leaks in the past from the Supreme Court. That's usually been around retirements or conflicts of personality amongst the justices, or maybe a justice or two agonizing over a decision. But this wasn't a bombshell last night. This was a neutron bomb. We've never had a fully written draft opinion of the court leaked. And you have to go back, I think, probably to a fair analogy or comparison would be the Pentagon Papers, to go all the way back to 1971 to find something as significant as this in terms of a leak. And this has just shaken the court to its core, because this has never happened before.
Well, and that was one of the things I got brought up from those that follow the court closely last night. Maybe I'm a bit of a nerd, but some of the people I follow on Twitter are like the Supreme Court of the United States blog. And they had referenced the fact that this is going to make that work environment within the courts, that trust that they had amongst themselves, the clerks, she's gone. That I don't say bond, but that work environment has forever been changed in their mind here. But the question comes down to, when we talk about leak now, I've noticed today the Republicans in Congress really want us to focus on this leak. And I'll get into that later. I won't pull you into that. But you have to start asking, who benefits from doing this? I think there's fingers being pointed here, but I don't think it's clear cut that, say, one of the justices that is left leaning, it was their clerk. It could be on the other side. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
My dear Watson, here we go. This is where it gets interesting here. You always have to look in cases like this with any leak, especially a leak of this magnitude, motive and desired effect. And I think here timing is everything. It very well could be one of the clerks to the three liberals on the court. But you take a look at the timeline. This opinion was circulated on February 10th. So why would those clerks leak it now when they could leak it at any time since? And what would be the desired outcome for them? Because, would you galvanize public opinion and get people into the streets protesting? Yeah, you could do that. But that doesn't seem like a very smart strategy. And it's certainly not going to be a tactic or a strategy, I would think, that would change any opinions on the court. So then you have to take a look at, I think, the conservatives on the court. And I think this is more likely than not the case. And the reason I bring this up is because look at the timeline. This is just pure speculation on my part. But the case, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, is argued on Wednesday, December 1st. The justices meet in conference on Fridays during the term. So that would have been about December 4th, where they met to discuss the case, held a tentative vote that day or the other, or the next Friday. The majority in the case is 5. So the senior most justice in the majority always assigns the writing of the opinion. In this case, we know it was Clarence Thomas, because Sam Alito got the assignment, because Thomas is the senior justice. Chief Justice Roberts, if he was in the majority with a case of this magnitude, likely would have assigned the case to himself. So we now know that's the makeup. Those 5: Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. And then you get into the holidays, and it takes about 2 months to write the opinion, and the opinion goes out on February 10th. It's circulating amongst the justices. But here's the important thing to remember, or to know. Oral arguments ended last week on the 27th. Last Wednesday, oral arguments ended at the court. We're now in the final 2 months of the court's term, where opinions are being finalized and where normally justices reevaluate their decisions. If you have 5 votes to overturn Roe versus Wade, you would be concerned that one of those justices may move in another direction. Most likely Kavanaugh, maybe Barrett, but I think most likely Kavanaugh, over to John Roberts' position, which, based on all reporting, is he's willing to uphold the ban on abortions in Mississippi after 15 weeks, but to allow abortions to take place up until then, and basically giving constitutional sanction to the procedure. And Roberts changed his vote famously in the 11th hour on the Obamacare vote back in 2012, in the Obamacare decision. And also, in the Casey decision in 1992 at the 11th hour, they had 5 votes to strike down Roe versus Wade. And Anthony Kennedy changed his vote at the 11th hour, persuaded by Sandra Day O'Connor and David Souter, who forged a middle ground. So I think there's a bigger upside here if you're a conservative clerk working for one of the 5 justices to lock these guys in. Because now if a Kavanaugh or a Barrett breaks and they go over to a middle ground, some kind of middle ground that Roberts forges, they'll forever be known as the conservative justice who saved Roe versus Wade. So this is brazen politics. This is for all the marbles here, and that's why I tend to think it's most likely from the conservatives on the court.
Well, and that goes counter to what a lot of people are accusing, because it's interesting watching. It's the Republicans out in Congress right now. I mean, Mitch McConnell just took to the Senate floor, and it was all about the leak. Got to find out who did the leak. Should there be charges against the person that did the leak? As though the assumption is that it came from the liberal side of this court, but you're laying out the fact that it could have been, and there, I think you put a pretty compelling argument out there, reason as to why it could have been the Republican side or the conservative side. I guess a more appropriate way of putting it. I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you also need to look at the way Politico handled the case. This is really inside baseball here, but the case, the story was written by Josh Gerstein, who is their legal affairs correspondent, and their national security reporter, Alexander Ward. Now, why would you take the national security reporter and put it on a story like this? And this is just a guess on my part, but national security reporters, journalists that cover the Defense Department and the intelligence community, they receive leaks all the time, often of a sensitive and sometimes classified nature. And they have very good protocols and protections in place to guard their sources. So to me, assigning Ward to this story strikes me as a move on the part of Politico to put those types of protections in place to ensure the leaker's identity is safe. And we also have to remember, we're not dealing with a large pool of suspects here. It's a very small pool we're looking at the Supreme Court. Right. And so I think that Politico knew what it was doing when it put its national security correspondent on the case as well.
Jason Matthews, my guest. He is adjunct political science instructor, Bismarck State College, the OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute, and you know what? He's taught a couple of courses on politics in the Supreme Court. Jason, I got to take a break, but can I get a little bit more of your time? The fallout. I mean, we've talked about the leak. Now we got to talk about the fallout from it, and quite frankly, you're looking down the road. We're in a midterm election. If I am a governor in, say, Minnesota right now, I wonder what this does as far as changing that conversation. You got a little bit more time for me?
Absolutely.
All right. Jason Matthews, again, our guest. We'll come back with him. These messages coming into 35270. I see ya. We'll get to those and so much more coming up right after this on KFGO.
democracy. It's certainly not something you want to see if you prize apolitical courts, which, of course, you can make the argument the courts have never been apolitical. But long-term effects for courts in general is it's very bad.
Did this accelerate some of that? I mean, you and I have had the conversation before. I mean, just the process to get onto the Supreme Court has been ruined. And now here we are seeing, I think, some of the ramifications, some of those same tactics being used here. Go ahead.
Yeah, no question about it. No question at all. This is just, we're just accelerating down the slippery slope.
Midterms, they're already underway. You've seen some of the response to this. You've seen the protests. Both people are celebrating this, and certainly people opposed to this. We think about just federal elections, but this impacts every legislative race in the country, every governor's race. Tell me your thoughts about going forward into this midterm, what this does, because everybody had in their mind it was all going to be inflation. This adds a whole other dynamic going into this midterm.
Nobody, and I mean nobody, can tell you how this is going to impact the midterms. We're all speculating here. At first blush, the Democrats and Democratic aligned groups are saying this is going to be great. We'll galvanize our voters here. We'll move suburban women away from being concerned about inflation to outright abortion bans and the like. But on the flip side, this can galvanize Republicans too, because now everything would move. If the court hands down this ruling, remember, this was just a draft opinion, but if the court throws this to the states, now Republicans will be even more galvanized to come out and vote in legislative races up and down the ballot, and all bets are off.
One thing
this can cut both ways.
Yeah, one thing that came to mind last night as this was breaking is, this has been a key component to Republican politics for a long, long, long time. And the saying that came to my mind was about this, the dog chasing the car finally caught the car. As far as electioneering and campaigning on things, and now you just kind of sat me back saying this could actually accelerate that too, because now you got these legislative races, you got these governor's races that it's upon them. And if you want to get this finalized in the state and not just the Supreme Court where they're going to kick it to the states, maybe I'm thinking the wrong way here, thinking that, all right, you got this. You got Donald Trump, you got your Supreme Court, and this is what you wanted. You finally achieved that, so you're going to take it easy. You're saying probably that might not be the case.
Be careful what you wish for. You might well get it. Here's the problem. I mean, just let's look at it from the Republican standpoint here. The Republicans are under pressure to take fairly absolutist positions on abortion, particularly in some of these southern states where there's no exceptions that are being made. That runs contrary to overall public opinion, where 55% of Americans are of the opinion that abortion should be legal in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases. So what you had for 40 years is you had the Democrats on the defensive on abortion, where now you have the Republicans who have now maybe will be on the verge, conservatives, I should say, because there are pro-choice Republicans who will get what they want, and now they're going to have to make these decisions. And they're going to be pressured by the anti-abortion groups to go absolutist when public opinion is not with them. And now you're already hearing the possibility of a full national abortion ban coming into effect if you get a Republican president or Republican Congress. So, this is all uncharted territory here. And we cannot even, we can only guess what the fallout might be. But the fallout will be significant. Now, for the Democrats might be liberated in the sense that there are Democrats who are not comfortable with abortions throughout an entire pregnancy, and they can now strike a more nuanced approach on this issue. We don't know how this is going to shake out, but it's going to be ugly, to say the least.
Well, and the conversation certainly has reared its ugly head quite often, time and time again, but I think this is going to make things so much worse. Jason, appreciate it, man. I'm up against the clock. I'm sure we'll be checking in again soon, all right?
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate your insight. Jason Matthews, again, a political science instructor out at Bismarck State College, Walsher Lifelong Learning Institute, where he's taught about this very topic on politics in the Supreme Court. We'll get back to your messages at 35270. After we get you caught up with KFGO News, don't go anywhere.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Dean's Bulk Service and C-Store in Barnesville. On the corners of Highways 9 and 34. Large enough to serve you, small enough to know you.
Sunny 51, I'm Paul Jurgens. Minnesota's top federal attorney says he's ordering his entire staff to work on violent crime cases. U.S. Attorney Andy Luger has directed all 42 prosecutors in his office to work on violent crimes. He says he will oversee every case from indictment to sentencing. He promised that all adult carjackers will do federal time and prosecutors will devote more resources to enforcing gun purchasing laws. Minneapolis and St. Paul are facing a violent crime wave. Minneapolis saw 97 homicides last year, the most since 1995. St. Paul recorded 38 homicides in 2021, breaking the city's record of 34 set in 1992. The North Dakota Attorney General's office has filed a civil consumer fraud complaint against Glosser Images, a Bismarck photography firm, and its owner, Jack Glosser. Glosser Images abruptly closed last October. It posted notice that it would not offer refunds to customers who had scheduled wedding and other special photo shoots. Others were denied promised photos. Consumer Fraud Division Director Beryl Grossman says the office has received 539 complaints that allege nearly $1.5 million in claims from multiple states.
Our investigation determined that Glosser Images was severely undercapitalized and had been experiencing serious financial problems years before the closure. For instance, Glosser's financial circumstances struggled from as early as at least 2018 with frequent bank account overdrafts and difficulties at times making employee payroll.
Grossman says it's deceptive and illegal to solicit and accept advance deposits for services. The lawsuits also would ban Glosser from providing future photography services and seeks restitution for customers and subcontractors and any appropriate civil penalties. 51, this is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. Reaction continues to the leak of a U.S. Supreme Court draft opinion that that would do away with a woman's right to abortion.
U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar giving her opinion after CNN played video of Trump's Supreme Court nominees appearing to show support for Roe.
I think that is a major problem. They said it was the law of the land. They are talking about the fact that it's been affirmed time and time again. And that's why I think a lot of people are shocked. I will tell you that I'm not shocked because you could see this in the way the questioning went.
Klobuchar says it's time for the U.S. Senate to pass a law upholding a woman's right to abortion to avoid a patchwork of state laws. She says that would protect women from resorting to potentially unsafe abortion.
That's reporter Adam Carter. Bismarck police have identified the man who exchanged gunfire with police officers and died yesterday. The body of 31-year-old Eric Hermanson was found in a shed. Police were investigating a stolen car report in a mobile home park when Hermanson fled out the back door of a trailer. Officers engaged in a foot pursuit. They returned fire after Hermanson allegedly shot at them during the chase. It's believed that he barricaded himself in the shed, but it's still unclear if the shot was self-inflicted or happened in the exchange of gunfire. The Republican-controlled Minnesota Senate has said no to a special commission that would recommend a new design for the state flag. Some lawmakers say one part of the current flag, the image of an Indian on horseback riding into the sunset, is an attempt to erase part of the state's heritage rather than honor it. The proposal is still in the House bill, and there may be conference committee negotiations. A horse from central Minnesota is the favorite to win the 148th running of the Kentucky Derby this weekend. Jeff Drown of Clearwater owns Zandon, and he drew the number 10 position at Churchill Downs for Saturday. Zandon was a 3-1 favorite to win the run for the Roses after yesterday's draw. Zozos, a horse owned by an Eden Prairie couple, opened at 20-1 odds. Fargo-Moorhead near 57 will stay mostly sunny this afternoon. We hit just at 51 here at our KFGO studios. Overnight, 39, partly cloudy, 59, mostly cloudy tomorrow. And then Thursday, a partly to mostly cloudy day, 64. Paul Jergens News Radio, KFGO.
You know something's wrong when we're excited to hear 51 degrees on May 3rd, but I assure you summer's on its way. And one of the things that has been discussed is E15 blend fuels at gas pumps this summer and all those changes. Maybe going forward, Rusty Alverson's the Farm and Ranch Report. He's back in the studio here. I know that's one of those things that there was a round of applause earlier on when the Biden administration talked about some of the changes with E15.
Yep, several Midwest governors want E15 sales year-round.
Right.
You bet. And the EPA announcing on Friday an emergency fuel waiver to allow E15 blended fuels at gas pumps this summer. USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack.
We had an interesting conversation with some folks about the expansion of biofuels during the summer months. Not an easy decision for the EPA to make, but one that the administrator was very cooperative in making in order for us to take and maintain the benefit in 2,300 stations across the United States.
Now, this initial waiver, Tyler, will last 20 days, but the EPA is expected to extend that waiver until such time that fuel supply circumstances caused by the Russian war in Ukraine no longer exist. E85prices.com. Some of the latest prices checked it earlier today. Premium fuel, $4.24 national average. For E10, the price $3.90. E15, $3.59. E85 at $3.11. And I'm gonna hop in the adventure car and go take some pictures of the wet fields here in a bit, and I've got to fuel up myself.
Well, I know at the gas station that I filled up at earlier today over lunch, $3.89 still for just regular good old fashioned gasoline. So,
Yep. Found myself in California recently to visit family. $4.89 was the cheapest we found in California.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most prices over $5.
What are you seeing out there? Because one of the things when we talked about the release of the reserve. The Biden administration would say, we're going to release, 1 million barrels, was it a day? Or I don't remember the figure. But it was all with the intent to lower what you're paying at the pump. I have not noticed gasoline prices taking a dip at all. $3.89 still, and I think that's where it was when that announcement was made. Now, granted, when you got this the E15 blend, you already mentioned that, the pennies and cents you can save there.
Yep.
So I'm sure people are looking into it.
Yeah, and I am fortunate. I've got a rig that can run on E85, and I put that in. Yeah.
Very good. Rusty, I'm going to let you go. You keep minds full out there. Well, some of those roads, there's a lot of water.
I'm going to be respectful. You don't want to be tearing up a lot of county roads.
Do not want to do that at all.
No. That's not what we do.
This message comes in. I'll throw it your way, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine. Hi. I have the national news report stated that E15 burns dirtier than E10 or non-ethanol fuel. I'm getting a smile, and I don't have an answer. I was trying to punt it to you, Rusty. We don't know, but we can sure try to find out for you. We'll do that over the CBS National News Update. All the other messages, in fact, maybe one of your fellow listeners has an answer. They can text back into 35270. Messages, everything from the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association, the Roars City Commission fight that's going on, to, yes, the Roe v. Wade leak last night that is sending the shockwaves. I told you there's 3 tracks that come to mind here. We touched on 2 of them. We can dive into the third one, as many of you have in the text club. When we come back here on KFGO, stick around. probably going to go down as Donald Trump's biggest impact, biggest accomplishment for some, biggest consequence in the minds of others. I mean, he was able to handpick a third of the Supreme Court in his 4 years. And this is one of those areas that I have said repeatedly when it comes to elections, that of the base voter mindset, the Supreme Court and judges have been a bigger priority for those that vote more conservative. And with this very issue in mind. And it appears that they finally got there. Now, whether or not it's going to be the dog that finally caught the car, been chasing it a long time. He caught it, now what? I don't know. That's where my mind went right away last night when it comes to the pure politics of it, the pure partisan electoral politics. So you got to elect me and we'll do this. Well, that might have just happened. Now what comes to mind? And I think that's on the minds of a lot of people. When you think about some of the language that was in the Alito draft, that it's not just about abortion, it's about privacy and rights overall. And if that is in fact the case, if it's about privacy, which is ironic that they're talking about privacy rights while they are complaining that their privacy was violated in the Supreme Court as this was leaked, that their work that they deemed to be private now leaked out for the world to see. There's irony in that, ladies and gentlemen. But if it is about privacy, if that's what in fact they are addressing here, and this is some of the message I've gotten in is, okay, well then what's next? You know, where's the line for that next thing that's not explicitly written in the Constitution saying, well, there's no protections for this. Same-sex marriage has been thrown into the text club for one. 35270. In fact, let me go to there and I'll get some of your thoughts. The bottom line is that little earthquake that we're talking about down in Louisiana during call in Baton Rouge, the political equivalent that happened last night. We have no idea what happens next when it comes to reproductive rights, women's rights, when it comes to the courts, when it comes to just the politics of a midterm election. Because if it does in fact come down to the states, you've got about 23 states that have already made it pretty dang well known where they stand on that. North Dakota, South Dakota, they've got laws waiting. They've crafted these and they wrote the language that if ever the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, that here's what happens. That's going to happen in North Dakota, and I know that Kristi Noem's throwing out tweets saying, I will immediately call a special session to address this. Governor, you don't have to. It's already on the books. Minnesota, Montana, not the case. And you know that some of these midterm elections, when it comes to the governorship, all of a sudden you have a lot more weight to those because these decisions will now be falling onto the states. And, an issue that wasn't necessarily at the state level on a lot of voters' minds, especially those swing voters, those suburban voters, those women voters that are in the suburbs, now all of a sudden this is going to be propelled to at least the top three issues. So if you're Governor Walz right now, and he's coming out pretty forceful saying, not on my watch, this won't change if you reelect me, it seems as though the pure electoral politics shifted overnight. But we don't know. But it's certainly, as just a political science observer, something that is going to change something. And we'll be here to talk about it. To the text club, I go, Tyler, where did it leave off? I got a lot of messages about a variety of things. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. It was going to come out sooner or later. I think it's telling. Out in Washington right now, if you're watching Mitch McConnell, if you're watching the Republicans respond to this, they are pointing at the fact that it was leaked. They're talking about the sheer breakdown of privacy for the Supreme Court because they don't want to talk about the substance, about the privacy issue of what this ruling will do for you as an average Joe or Jane out there. That's quite telling to me over the last 12 hours that this has been brought out. Other message I'm trying to find here, so bear with me as I get to the text club at 35270. Tyler, stop the war on women and girls. There's one more about this very issue about the politics and the privacy. Tyler, if the fact that something is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution means it's not protected, that leaves the door open to take away a lot more rights than abortion. And there's a lot of people wondering that. Where is the line then drawn if we don't have the right to privacy? Now, for those celebrating this, in which I know there's a lot, and quite frankly, people's minds are so dug in on this issue that, I mean, you've made up your mind mostly, a lot of you. I don't know if there's any persuasion left on this topic, but I do ask you this that support this, because I've seen that this has not been consistent, that, all right, this is now gone. I got to ask, okay, birth control, you're going to have it, because if this is about unwanted pregnancies, there's other ways to prevent that, ladies and gentlemen. So are you going to have it more affordable? Are you going to have it more readily available? You're going to support that? Once that child's born, you think about the programs, the funding issues that we've had for those. When we've asked, all right, that child's been born now, and this family or maybe this mother needs help in providing A, B, or C. You're going to support putting funding into those? Or is it going to be pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Because there are listening sessions going on right now in North Dakota about childcare. And that's primarily driven because of the workforce shortage we have. So if we're talking about pulling up by bootstraps, go get a job, that's tough to do if, in fact, this childcare issue isn't resolved. Foster care, adoption, those things after that child is born, are you going to support those and the expansion of those is my question for you. 35270. Laney Stuhlan is 237-5948. I got to get to this weather update. I'll come back to your thoughts in the text club right after this. Fellas, what are you willing to do? It takes two to tango. Imagine a ruling comes down saying, hey, you know, all the things that help you in that equation, those are gone, prohibited. You know what pills I'm talking about, the blue ones, whatever. Imagine your reaction to this, fellas. What are you willing to do on this situation? Messages pouring in. Tyler, any decision based on the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment is now in danger, according to Alito's reasoning. That's where this issue, I already said, there's a lot of people's minds that have already been just so ingrained. No persuasion here. But if that reasoning in Alito's draft is the basis for it, it's not just this issue. You know, that's why the concern of where does that end then? And that's why I think the concern beyond just this abortion, rights, pro-life, whatever you want to deem this debate as. That's why that earthquake being felt wasn't because of a leak. Even that's, if you want Mitch McConnell's reasoning, he wants you to be focused on a leak instead of the substance, because the substance broadened out, troubling, is it not? We'll continue the conversation. Got to get you caught up with CBS and KFGO News next. I'm Tyler Axis. Stick around. reminder, Mother's Day, Sunday. Couple of ways you can celebrate, of course. Go and provide a gift, perhaps, from Carol Windman's or from Hair Success or from the Mendak Market. And don't forget, if you text the word MOM to 35270 right now, you're going to get a prompted response back. That gives you a phone number. You call that number, and you can leave her a sweet, heartfelt message and then get it played back right here on the most listened to radio station in the area, KFGO. So again, you text MOM to 35270, and you can hear that throughout the week here. In fact, we'll play back some of those messages in this next half hour. All these messages, and boy, there are a lot of them that have been sent into the iConsultants of North Dakota text club at 35270. I'll come back to that and so much more this final half hour. We're talking about the Supreme Court last night. Yes, there was a lot of messages sent in about the Roars, City of Fargo, tension. It's all on the table. It's you, me, this microphone, and your cell phone right after this KFGO News.
KFGO News, sunny 51. I'm Paul Jergens. Two people face drug charges after a fentanyl bust in Moorhead. Police say 32-year-old Shananda Fleming of Dunseat, North Dakota, and 25-year-old Abraham Lawrence of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, were acting suspiciously when a police officer conducted a traffic stop for an equipment violation early Sunday morning. They said the driver initially gave a false name before the car was searched. 300 fentanyl pills were seized with a street value of about $10,000. It was the fourth significant fentanyl seizure in Clay County since March. Fargo developer Jim Roars has fired back after he was criticized by several city commissioners who say he failed to build a promised buffer of 7 townhouses that were supposed to have been completed 4 months ago. Commissioner Dave Pepcorn told Roars he was a liar, and he claimed Roars had no plan to build the townhouses. Commissioner Arlette Preston told Roars that he broke a promise to finish, and the contract for the project is essentially null and void. On KFGO News and Views today, Roars said he will finish the project, but he needs an extension. He said huge construction costs prompted by the pandemic caused the delay. He said the attack on him is political.
So why all at once this one being making such an issue where they would call me a liar, a cheater, and a stealer is just beyond belief, except for the fact that my daughter happens to be running against several of those people that want that office. Look at the complexion here, guys. It doesn't smell good.
Roars' daughter, Shannon Roars Jones, is running for Fargo mayor. And commissioners have approved a motion to have the city attorney meet with Roars' attorneys to discuss the issue and potential options. The National Guard is helping to stabilize a dam in Cavalier County in northeastern North Dakota that is in danger of failing and causing even worse flooding. Governor Burgum, at the request of Pembina County Emergency Management, authorized the Guard to send 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters to place 1 ton of sandbags to help stop the Borbanis Dam from failing. Senator Amy Klobuchar is warning of repercussions like never before if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. Politico released an initial draft majority opinion last night by Justice Samuel Alito that says authority to regulate abortions must be returned to the states. Klobuchar says it would mean the return of back alley abortions and people having to take buses to other states. Fargo-Moorhead near 57. Our high this afternoon will be partly cloudy overnight near 39. A mostly cloudy day tomorrow, 59, 64. Thursday, partly to mostly cloudy. Sunny 52. Paul Jergens, News Radio, KFGO.
Senator Kevin Cramer just, 3 minutes ago put out on Twitter his statement. And again, I go back to the conversation that we had with Jason Matthews, which is podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, including KFGO.com. Just click on the Afternoons Live podcast to listen back. Because when it comes about the leak, this is what Republicans want you to focus on, is the leak instead of the substance of the 90-plus page draft that the Supreme Court has acknowledged as being real. He put out the leak from inside the Supreme Court undermines the legitimacy, confidentiality, and independence the court has for centuries. This is the line that I want you to pay attention to the most. The far left is attempting to bully justices into submission instead of letting the judicial branch perform their duties without influence or bias. That accusation that keeps ringing from Republican politicians, where's the facts based on? Where's the evidence? This speculation is all that is, that it was the far left, that it was anybody center left that leaked this. Now, the cost benefit of, well, who benefits from this leak? I think it's a pretty compelling argument that was made earlier that with the timeline of this, an acknowledgement to what some people had texted into 35270, that, you know what, if this was the Democrats leaking this or the left leaking this, you wanted to be a little bit closer to the election or just let the decision come out. But if you're trying to solidify this outcome from the right side of the court, now you just applied a whole lot of pressure on those that might have wavered. So we don't know who leaked it. I know there's people that when it comes to electoral politics, they're not going to care who leaked it. They will care about the outcome of the decision. So this attempt that you're seeing, that's quite frankly appearing to be more and more orchestrated. I'm sure the guys got together in the smoke-filled room and said, oh boy, we got to do something here because we did not see this coming. Well, let's talk about the leak. What the leak itself, albeit I don't think it's by all means at all the appropriate way of going about it, but to just have this accusation that's based entirely on speculation and then relying on that as your response shows that there's a little bit more concern perhaps about people learning about what the actual draft says. And if it's based on the right of privacy, as some people are saying, and the reasoning here, then it goes beyond just abortion. 35270. I'm sure there's going to be more similar statements if they have not already been out there from area delegation. You've heard Senator Klobuchar with her comments. Tina Smith said something that I can't play back for you on air because it's bull, and you can finish the rest in your minds. So it's the party lines. You're not surprised by that. But it's that line of accusation saying, well, this is the far left doing this. I need to see some evidence on it. I'm going to get back to the text club, 35270. Tyler / level-headed liberal. That might identify who this person's texting in. There's only one guy that comes to mind that gave me that name. I am older than you, and I remember when pro-choice people used to argue that first trimester. Well, now I lost it because I got more messages than it's talking about the evolving science to this. You'll notice you'll notice that they have changed it now from kids are not kids. First try. It goes into the whole science of the thing. How convenient is what they're saying that the argument is adapting there. Tyler, the government constitution does not give us rights. It limits the power of government. Government is supposed to be of the people, for the people. Ask if that is the case. More messages in, but I tell you what, we get to the phone lines, and that's where we connect with James, who's called in. James, I appreciate the phone call. How are you?
Good, thanks. See, I was wondering, when this happens now, for people that aren't ready to have kids, is birth control going to be outlawed too, or are you just, how does this all work?
Well, James, that's the line that people are drawing, saying, well, if it starts here, can they come after birth control next? Can they come after, IVF with people that are trying to have children that need assistance in doing so? Where, does it stop here, or is this that whole slippery slope just the beginning of what all of a sudden laws are going to be changing here? I think the answer to your question is, I don't have an answer, James.
Okay, yeah. I was just curious of where it stops. Yeah, what you're saying.
My question for you, James, now that I got you, is that something you'd support? Because that's when polling's come out on this, and this goes for Republican voters as well, saying if this goes back to the states, they would support an increase in affordable birth control measures. Would you support something like that? Well,
yeah, affordable birth control, but if they're going to ixnay it, then, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of a forced
Yeah. James, I appreciate
birthing. And
I appreciate the phone call there. And you asked what the question that's on your mind's not isolated to your mind. That's why if the reasoning that Alito gives is based on, the 14th, then people say this could have its fingerprints on a lot of things that we have become accustomed to since this decision and beyond. Messages, I got to get out of the way. The messages for Mom, if you sent them in, you be listening. You tell her to turn it up because you're going to hear that message right now. We'll come back and we'll continue the conversation. I have no other guests. It's you, me, this microphone, your cell phone. I'm Tyler Axedis, and this is KFGO Fargo. taking the female artist to the next level back there. In the 90s, every single one of you had an Ace of Base cassette. Don't lie. I know it's true, at least in the
possibly
little
an
town.
early adopter CD player, CD also, right?
Yeah, when did the CD really take over? Because you had the Discman with the adapter that went into the cassette player, and just hope that you weren't on a gravel road or anything that had a pothole in.
I want to say I looked it up one time, and it was like 94 or 5 that CDs overcame cassettes in sales.
That didn't mean that everybody. I wonder when it became
the standard.
The standard of your vehicle to have a CD player in addition to or in replacement of the cassette.
Oh, I bet you that's pushing 2000.
I'm guessing as well. I'm trying to think of that old GMC pickup back in Leeds. That was, I don't remember what year, but that was cassette.
My 1989 Oldsmobile 88 definitely was cassette only.
Yeah, somebody out there knows. 35270. Okay, Tyler, you usually say, quote, and thanks for listening enough to quote me, if this is in fact a real quote. Tyler, you usually say we aren't talking conspiracy theories, but what if the right leaked it? Now you'll repeat conspiracies, and then it laughs. Look, I throw out there because Kevin Kramer is throwing out, hey, the far left did this without providing any evidence of it. I think it's fair to ask the question, one, where's the evidence if you're going to be throwing this wild accusation out? Because we don't know. I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think that's could be. Because it's one or the two, and the pool of candidates isn't very large. You've got the justices themselves, which they did not do this. I would assume not anyway. You've got their clerks. You've got people. It had to have come from somebody inside the House, meaning the Supreme Court. It had to. But just throwing the loosely based, the far left trying to bully them from a U.S. senator without evidence, and now that's certainly the talking point they're parading around today. Because they want us talking about the leak, not the substance. I think it's fair. Tyler, look into Ginny, Clarence Thomas's wife. She's nutty enough to do this. That's an interesting addition to this conversation. She certainly has been in the know of being a influence, I think, with her husband, at least when it comes to the politics of it. Outside the court, we already know about the text messages, in which I say there's no way you cannot convince me that Clarence Thomas did not know that she was texting other men in the White House with Jared Kushner, with Mark Meadows, with all that. She was running around all these things. He knew. Remember, he was the one that voted to not request the documents from the White House. And yeah, well, we don't need to see that over in the House. Because he knew. Now, that is a conspiracy theory. If you're going to be throwing things around, that's a conspiracy theory. 35270. Some of these I need to proofread because, boy, are they pushing the limits of a good family-friendly regulated radio station. So bear with me. If I abruptly stop this because I come across a word I can't use, and if you put it on the teleprompter, I usually read it. As Eric gets ready for the red button back there to dump me. If they continue to put restrictions in our free country on abortions, birth control should be 100% paid. Sex crime individuals, circumcision. See, that's what I'm telling you about. Schools need to teach sex ed in a new informed way. Also, tougher laws on child support. That's where one of the things I ask you, all right, because there's people that have been cheering this and have been working for this for a long time. Now what? It's the dog that caught the car. That's why I ask, if this is this the end all be all? Because there is still now, a child out there. So if we're talking about unwanted pregnancies, well, there's a way to prevent them, boys and girls. Education's one, control's another one. But then if in fact this child is born, those programs that have been so damn underfunded because, well, they just ought to pull them up by the bootstraps. Go get a job. We all know about the workforce. Part of the barriers for people getting into the workforce is lack of child care for that child. Are you willing to address those issues that have been festering along with this issue that have been so laser focused on? I think that's a fair question to ask for people that are celebrating this today. 35270. You want to call in? That's cool. Lady studio line is 237-594. This final half hour, I already told you, I don't have any guests lined up. I'll take any and all. Got to get you caught up with KFGO News. I got some answers into the CD, replacing the cassette player, plus, of course, the topic at hand. I'm Tyler Axis. This is KFGO Fargo.
Are encouraged that the U.S. Supreme Court may strike down the 1973 decision legalizing abortion. But Scott Fishbach, with Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life, says it would not mean an immediate change in most states.
Even if the United States Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, when it comes back to Minnesota, we still need to overturn the Doe versus Gomez decision.
That law allows the state to pay for abortions for low-income women. House Democratic Majority Leader Ryan Winkler.
Our Supreme Court is elected, and I expect Republicans to bring their anti-abortion position to our Supreme Court elections also.
Winkler warns that a Republican-controlled legislature could also pass bills to test the limits of the Minnesota case or put a constitutional amendment on the state ballot to ban abortions. North Dakota and South Dakota would be able to outlaw abortions 30 days after a Supreme Court decision making abortions illegal. 52, this is KFGO News. 52 degrees. This is KFGO News. 2 people face charges after a fentanyl bust in Moorhead. Police say 32-year-old Shanonda Fleming of Dunseith, North Dakota, and 25-year-old Abraham Lawrence of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, were acting suspiciously when a police officer conducted a traffic stop for an equipment violation early Sunday morning on 20th Street near Belsley Boulevard. The car had also hit the median. Police said the driver initially gave a false name before the car was searched. 300 fentanyl pills were seized with a street value of about $10,000. It was the 4th significant fentanyl seizure in Clay County since March. Bismarck police have identified a man who exchanged gunfire with police and later died. The body of 31-year-old Eric Hermanson was found in a shed by West Dakota SWAT. Police were investigating a stolen car report in a trailer park when Hermanson fled out the back door of a mobile home. Officers got into a foot pursuit and returned fire after Hermanson, they say, shot at them during the chase. It's believed that he barricaded himself in the shed, but it is still unclear if the shot was self-inflicted or happened in the exchange of gunfire. Attorney General Drew Wrigley has sued a Bismarck-based photographer and its owner. Glaser Images closed without notice last fall. That prompted a consumer fraud investigation. Wrigley says the investigation found 539 complaints totaling nearly $1.5 million. The shutdown left wedding couples without their pictures. The complaint says Glaser had been having financial issues for years, but falsely blamed the closing on the pandemic. Wrigley is asking for restitution for customers and subcontractors. An unexpected discovery in Moorhead. Goldfish were found in a culvert in the Minnesota State Community and Technical College campus along 28th Avenue South from 8th Street to 20th Streets. The DNR says about 275 goldfish, considered an invasive species, were recovered by a person with a net. The fish were taken to North Dakota, where they had to be destroyed. A DNR conservation officer removed 10 to 15 more fish. Most were stuck in weeds. It isn't known if the fish got into nearby sewers, and officials don't know who released the fish or why. Fargo-Moorhead near 57 for our high yet this afternoon. We're at 52 now. Partly cloudy, 39 overnight. Tomorrow, a mostly cloudy sky, and meteorologist Tom Shemansky is expecting about 59, 64 then Thursday, partly to mostly cloudy, 69 Friday, a partly sunny day. 52 once again in Fargo-Moorhead. Paul Jerkins, News Radio, KFGO.
For those tuning in to Afternoons Live for the first time, playing female artists today. Deal with it. I'd ask, when did CDs overtake cassette tapes? Tyler, I had a 2001 Pontiac Bonneville. I swear, everyone either had in that era either a Pontiac, the Grand Am or the Bonneville.
I had a Bonneville.
We were the Grand Am family.
Sure.
Had a 2001 Bonneville with the CD and cassette. Had a 2008 Infinity G37. G37? I don't remember that. I remember the G6 with a CD only. So somewhere in there. So, okay, somewhere between 2001 and 2008, the CD overtook the cassette player in vehicles.
Do you remember the golden era of when you upgraded the deck in your car?
Yes.
And you
get
wanted
the
to get
coolest,
the fanciest.
Yeah, you get the coolest display that you'd have to get the ones that you could pop the display off because you didn't need people breaking in and stealing your sweet Walmart purchase from Devil's Lakes Walmart.
But if you had the one where the screen came out on a motor and then flipped up, you were king of the decks.
I did not have that.
I also did not.
Oh, okay.
No.
But we all know somebody who did.
Yep.
Okay, well, we weren't that cool, I guess, in high school. I did have one that just angled just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for whatever reason, if you were leaning forward in your vehicle, you could get a better angle of what your CD player was playing. Thanks for sending that in. Somewhere in between 2001 and 2008. Well, get you caught up. CBS National News. They're going to tell you more about the topic of which we've been talking about throughout the afternoon here. I'll come back to your messages. We'll see what's coming up on the truncated version of the Drive Time News. Jack Sunday is going to be steering you right into Twins baseball. They're at Baltimore again 5:30 is the pregame. Chris Atterbury will be taking over these airwaves. I think 6:05 or 6:10 first pitch right here on your home for Twins, KFGO. That's a no for me, pal. A for effort, though.
There are other of their songs that I like better. This was the only one we had.
There
on
are
the
a
system.
ton of female artists, of which are known world round, including for the listeners of the station. And you choose Churches.
I did.
Swing and a
Personal
miss.
favorite.
All right, 35270. Tyler Wright should never be taken away from a woman, period. Another one comes in. It's an overly excited Republican staffer. They'll be forgiven quickly. Now we're talking conspiracy theory if that other person's still listening. Again, I'm going to say it one more time because I think I'm repeating myself, but it needs to be stated. If you've got a U.S. senator, and now in this case today, there's been a lot of U.S. senators just pointing, well, look over there. It's the left that leaked this. They're trying to be bullies. They pound that drum. I mean, if that's what Kevin Cramer wants and his staff sending out the pressers because they want us to know, look over here. Don't look into the 90 pages and don't look into what the substance of what this ruling would do if, in fact, this decision is upheld whenever it is handed down. Get outraged about a staffer or a leaker. But for those out there that are going to be impacted by this, that are going to be voting based on this issue, they do not give a damn about who leaked this. It will be all just forgotten when the decision comes down, whether it's this one or if all of a sudden it's molded a little bit differently. So they can try to make sure that everyone's looking over here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Pay no attention to what Alito, the author of this decision, has to say. I mean, that's what you're seeing today. But if you're going to be throwing those out there in a position of power like Kevin Cramer has as a U.S. Senator, you better bring receipts. You better have something to back that up because we're going to be wondering, and the odds of us ever finding out who leaked this, even though it is a small pool of candidates, very slim. And very slim. Bottom line is that the leak itself, it will impact probably the actions of the Supreme Court. But in your mind, the credibility of the court has been impacted over the course of the last few decades, has it not? I mean, you certainly have displayed that to me in my short window that I've been with you on this show of 4 years. Whether it was Obamacare being upheld, whether it's this, whether it's Citizens United, all these things have come into play in which you've questioned it. And then to watch, certainly over the last few appointments, the circus that's unfolded in the U.S. Senate with some of the grandstanding from the U.S. senators that instead of asking questions really just want to get that little blip on the nightly news on cable television. I mean, all of it has been run into the mud. I don't know how you get that back. You know, that in your mind, that image of having that prestigious court at the top, the highest court of the land, above politics, that's not the case anymore, and you know it. Not a good place to be with a democracy, especially if you're seeing some of these, reasonings coming down and what you've got questions as to having, for example, the last president. That's why I said this will go down if this decision holds. This will be his legacy. You can hate it, you can love it, but people will point at Donald Trump for getting this done during his term, and now the decision will happen after his term, but it was during his administration, which he got a third of the Supreme Court, the current justices seated. He's going to get credit for that. Or he will be noted in history for having that be a part of his accomplishments during that Congress to get these people seated. And this is the decision that it seems as though all three of them are partaking in. That's why elections have consequences. You hear it every year. It's well, you just got to deal with it. Well, now here it is, and you're dealing with the consequence of that election in 2006 and prior going back. And that's why when we've come back every year, the driving factor, when you think about those bases and what brings them out to vote, the Republican Party and conservatives have consistently talked about courts and judges. It's paid off for them. Not universally. Not everyone is all or nothing on this. There's gray areas, and I think that's going to be flushed out and top of mind going into this midterm of, do you have exceptions on the state docket for this if it comes to be that? So it's all up in the air. But I do think that if anything, if this decision is down, that is going to shift to Democrats or the liberal base starting to voting with judges on mind as well. It's time to catch up with the whole ball game, I think, for them, and now it's thrust upon them here in 2022. I'm going to get you this weather update from Too Tall Tom Szymanski. We'll come back, wrap up Afternoons Live again, a shortened the drive time news with Jack Sunday, taking you into Twins baseball. I'm Tyler Axis. This is Afternoons Live on 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO. Tomorrow, Wednesday, already midpoint of the week, we've got Bill Warner, Capital correspondent. Chris Atterbury, the studio host here at Minnesota Twins. You're going to hear him here at about at 5:30. Next Monday, I think him and I are going to be playing a little catch on Target Field. I'll tell you more about that. We have a fun show coming up Monday from Minneapolis. We'll tease about that a little bit tomorrow. But Jack Sunday's in the studio. He's got the drive time news.
Yeah, we've got all the news you need for that drive home, and we have to do it in 30 minutes because we have Twins baseball. Twins won last night, and they will do so again at Baltimore. We will begin with Too Tall Tom, and he has some tidbit for us, and of course we'll have complete details on any weather. Paul Juergens will be with us. We'll have a traffic update for you. We have Rusty Halverson with an ag update, sports, and we're going to also talk to Jim Gilmore, who is the City of Fargo Director of Strategic Planning and Research, and he was a part of the planning and research and went into the Roosevelt neighborhood where the agreement was, to much fanfare, that they'd come to a compromise where they would build some townhouses along that street to kind of be a buffer for the old neighborhood, wouldn't have to have the busy parking lots and the kids coming and going. It was kind of and then they didn't do it. And so, and it was quite a hubbub last night.
It was. And
Dave Pepcorn called Jeff Roars a liar.
There's a lot of heat. And we had the association on earlier because, as you said.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they came with the compromise. And, because you had Jim Roars earlier today on KFGO on News and Views. You had Dave Pepcorn in the City Commission last night. A lot of people were talking about the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association.
Yeah.
So we had them on saying, they're claiming that you were in the know. And they're like, well, I'm not sure who they've been talking to. We're not happy with where things are right now. So it'll be interesting to hear from the city again, from your show, of where this all fell apart. Because there's some of the accusations I got in the text club. Now, there's politics involved in all this.
Well, yeah, but there are facts.
That's what I said. There was the contractual side that things have not been met. That you can have that and acknowledge that there's politics. But the bottom line is promises were made. They haven't been lived up to yet.
Well, the thing I thought of when I heard about it was that I wonder why the Roosevelt neighborhood, they were very active on social media. They were on my show, your show, and you've had them on since. Okay, cool. I wish I would have heard that one.
Oh, it's at KFGO.com podcast.
Oh, is it?
Page.
Okay, thank you. Because I had him on prior to it, and I would have thought there would have been pitchforks and torches, but it's been kind of cold.
Yeah. I had asked Ken, who was on, I mean, you just want what was promised to be accomplished, right? And if the accusation...
Did they not notice, and didn't they call somebody and say, hey, they're not building townhouses here?
Well, and that's what Ken goes, look, we don't have paid staff to be following along if deadlines are being met or if they're being, just kind of pushed aside. If you recall back when the negotiations, which they were basically negotiating on their behalf to Roars, they had what they wanted, and they just wanted to get done. The compromise, just have it be there. If the claim is, and I think there's merit to it, that costs with everything with supply chain, and we all know the costs of goods are going up. But you can't say that after you just got done bragging about going above and beyond for the Newman Center right there as well. So are you putting your more expensive than that? People are upset.
And they got quite a bit of money in PPP too.
That was a claim that came in as well, saying, well, if you got
I looked it up just a minute ago.
Yeah, well, I just hope that for everyone's sake this gets resolved, because there's people not happy on all corners of this.
Yeah, I know. And so we'll have Jim Gilmore on, and I think Eric Johnson and I were talking about the nature of the show today. It's going to be truncated, because we also have Dick Bramer, who's going to be in with Derek Hansen and Jack Michaels, doing a little baseball talk too.
Preview the Twins game, preview the pregame of the Twins game with Dick Bramers is coming up on the drive time. Jack Sunday again going to be steering you right into that Twins pregame. Chris Atterbury at 5:30 is when you'll be taking over, because they're out at Baltimore. They did win 2-1 last night. I suspect we'll probably have a similar outcome as far as another W tonight. Let's go 11 for 12 over the last couple of weeks. Been fun to watch. Been fun to listen to right here for free on KFGO. Again, tomorrow, in fact, we'll recap that game, get you ready for tomorrow night's game at Baltimore as well with Chris Atterbury, the studio host. We got Bill Werner. Also, it's time to start getting these local candidates on to tell you about why they're running and why you should consider sending them your vote. That and more coming up tomorrow. Folks, all these messages, I apologize. I didn't get to all of them. There's a lot of passion in here. But for the most part, you kept it civil. I only had to clean up a couple of them because of words you can't use on air. So I thank you for that with such an emotional topic. But that's it for me today. I'm Tyler Axis, your host here on Afternoons Live. I'll be back tomorrow for more of the show. Till then, you drive safe. Take care of yourselves. I'll check in right here on KFGO.